The news about growth in the U.S. inflation fueled speculation that the U.S. Federal Reserve may continue to raise interest rates. However, the key rate is likely to remain unchanged during the next Fed meeting next week. There are many other interesting events this week. We'll discuss them in detail on InstaForex TV. Early Thursday, markets will assess the Australian labour market. Clues about further decisions of the Reserve Bank of Australia can be found in the value of the increase in the number of employed. The monetary authorities are cautious and closely monitor the economic indicators after monetary policy tightening. At the September meeting, the Reserve Bank of Australia left the interest rate unchanged, despite the fact that inflation remains very high. However, if the labour market shows signs of a recovery, the regulator may reconsider its decision on the key rate. The European Central Bank Governing Council's decisions will be announced on Thursday. Markets expect a pause in rate hikes as the economic conditions in the Eurozone are much worse than in Australia. Manufacturing and business activity are shrinking, and a new forecast for economic growth suggests only a slowdown and inflation above target. In such an unfavorable environment, the euro will continue to weaken against the US dollar. However, the US currency will also be quite vulnerable in anticipation of the US retail sales data. Notably, the reports on retail sales outline the growth prospects of the American economy, because about two-thirds of the total US GDP is formed at the expense of consumer spending. Analysts who monitor the macroeconomic data from the United States expect sluggish growth of 0.2% in August. At the same time, the annual growth rate may slow to 2.9% from 3.2%, which could be affected by a sell-off in the market. Along with the retail sales data, the Producer Price Index will be released, and this report will provide clues on the inflation in the United States. Producer price inflation is expected to accelerate to 1.2% year-over-year, which means consumer inflation may soar as well, another signal for the Fed to resume rate hikes. Therefore, if the forecast comes true, the US dollar can be appreciated by investors who use a carry trade strategy. On a Friday, markets anticipate a calm trading day. There are many events on this data, but most of them will have no impact on the market except for the news from China. And the industrial production report from the world's main supplier of consumer goods will determine sentiment in the commodity markets and affect risky currencies, so China's industrial sector is slowly gaining momentum. The growth rate is expected to accelerate to 3.9% from 3.7% year-over-year. Such gradual and steady growth is much more convincing than sudden spurts, so such statistics are likely to increase risk appetite. The Australian dollar, the main barometer of risk sentiment in the Asia-Pacific region, may strengthen against this backdrop. At the end of Friday, investors will return to the topic of consumption in the United States. The University of Michigan will provide a report on consumer sentiment in the United States. So far, the university experts have been cautious in the assessment of the economy's prospects. And this is especially true with the US inflation is accelerating again. And we will monitor the market reaction to the above-mentioned reports. Subscribe to our channel and follow changes in market sentiment with us. Any comments, questions and offers are welcomed. We wish you profitable trading and see you soon.